Alright, I should be live now. Okay.
Alright.
Alright, so I think we'll just look at Oasis first, Shock versus Eternal, and then we'll just start from Sp9rkle's POV. And maybe just watch this map through. I think he plays Genji on all 3 points. And then we can look at Violet later on Ilios, maybe. So just fast forward through some of this. So this is just like a TP out of spawn, but we'll just focus on the Genji play. I mean, so I guess maybe it's important to point out the comp. So it's similar. So both teams are kind of running like more of a spam type comp with brawly elements, but the only differences are like the DPS on either side. So Paris is opting for the Kree Genji, Shock's going with Dash Tracer. Yeah, well, I mean, this is more of a micro analysis, so we'll just see how Sp9rkle plays. Pretty aggressive with the dash, but he did have the deflect. Oh, thick grandma, thanks for the follow. Anything we want to talk about there?
Yeah, so yeah, before, I think let's go ahead and maybe discuss like what is the goal of Genji, right? So I think obviously for one, it's like farm blade, right? So
yeah.
he's gonna be looking dash through poles, maybe looking to, you know, dive separated targets like healers or pressure tanks. Genji's damage right now is just pretty insane. What else? So I think things to keep in mind when we're reviewing DPS, right, is you're gonna be looking at positioning, like thinking about why is he where he is. Thinking about how he's like utilizing damage angles, what kind of pressure he's looking to do, and then we'll look at ult usage as well. But yeah, I think that's about it.
And like target priority too, like where he's focusing the damage at what points in the fight, like what are like the default like targets he focuses at the beginning, and then as the fight breaks down, how does he move from target to target, and who's he focusing first, and then later on. Yeah. So we just.
Plug you.
We can just rewatch that first fight again. So I mean, he dashes the Risa pull like immediately, so and gets 20 ult charge for it, and then immediately deflects. So I mean, this is pretty aggressive, I feel like, but I guess he trusts his team is right there.
Yeah, so I think he can go for that dash, right? Because he's like his team is right there with him. It's like otherwise, I don't think you ever want to. Or right, I think the general rule of thumb is never to dash engages Genji unless you're like blading right after.
Right.
If you're going in, you want to make sure you have a like don't get caught with your pants down, right? You want to have a reason or have a way to get out. So yeah, so right here he's okay to dash, right? Because his team is like right with him, and he has deflect up, and he can just like easily kind of walk backwards into his team if he needs help.
Right. How is the stream looking, by the way? Because I feel like there's a lot of frames that are skipping. I'm getting some warnings.
It's skipping a little bit, but it's okay, I think.
Okay. Yeah, just let me know if it gets real bad.
Yeah.
So still kind of playing safe, really focusing frontline, not going too deep, staying with the core of his own team, and not like dashing deep into enemy backline.
Yeah. Just like any other rule, always prioritize staying alive. I just thought of something.
Yeah, what's up?
Some people record like. Actually, never mind. I don't see anything. All right. Yeah. So we don't. I don't think we should really. We don't have to analyze like specifically why they lost that fight. Just from
Yeah.
this point of view, it's hard to tell. So we just keep going.
So we're 80 to Blade here, so we could see an ult come out this fight.
Oh, getting a little choppy.
Yeah, I'm wondering if that's because, like, my game is running on, I think, Ultra on this. Limit FPS, custom, apply. Hold on, let me just show frame rate. Yeah, it is. It definitely seems quite choppy. Let me just restart this real quick.
Yeah.
I think this should hopefully help.
Oh, I'm out of water. All right, we're back.
All right, I think it should be a lot better now. So taking advantage of our own window, poking. Giving up a
Window.
bit.
Should we spam through the window here? Good. Now we have Blade, right?
Yeah,
So we're gonna be looking for pull blades, any kind of combos. Oh, that's unlucky. Super unlucky.
and Striker got a massive bomb.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I guess I'm like probably 5 seconds ahead of you.
Okay.
Alright, so we flux.
So let's talk about what we like. What's the thought process, right? When we have Blade going into a fight. Or I guess we can watch this fight out. See what happens.
Okay, I'll just keep it going.
Oh yeah, your stream is a little bit behind, but it's okay. It's a little hard. Yeah, so we saw a pull combo with the blade there.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I mean, I'll let you. Maybe you can talk about this, but it's like when we have blade, we're going into fights. Like, what do we think about?
I think the biggest thing is just like what cooldowns does the enemy have, and then what cooldowns do we have, right? So like,
Right.
things that are gonna stop us. Like if we just look at the shocks comp, right? So, I mean, a very big thing would be like immortality field. If we're having to spend dashes and slashes dealing with that, that's one, damage that's not going into people, and two, as you're trying to deal with that, the enemy has time to shut you down, right? Other things like Brig's shield bash and flail to kind of just stun you, displace you. And then also enemy ultimates. So like if Sig has Flux, for example, it's definitely reasonable, especially at this level, that you're gonna get fluxed.
Coach gun as well.
Coach gun, yeah.
Bash, whip, oh yeah, flail. I don't know if you said. I think you might have said that already, but
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. So it's like I feel like with how the game is now, it's like you just gotta go into blades, being aware of that you're probably gonna get bashed, you're probably gonna get flailed, or you're probably gonna have to like break an immortality and just like mentally prepare for that. Like,
I will say on the flip side, like if you consider your own team's cooldowns, like if you have a Brig, I don't remember exactly which patch this was on, but like, making sure you're full or your armor packed. Um, I guess the game is changing now where you don't have like the overheal buff, but trying to be as full as possible. Like if you know your Orisa is gonna bongo, or if your Sigma is going to flux, like comboing with that, or comboing with like a halt. Just being mindful of like the cooldowns your teammates are going to be using will be helpful. Because like if your Orisa is going to halt and you're already close to that halt, you don't necessarily need to dash to that immediately. And I think it's best if you can get a slash in first and then dash. Generally, I feel like that works better than the other way around. It just allows you to animation cancel a bit faster. But yeah, I mean, it's just mainly like tracking what cooldowns are on the field.
in general, I think you're supposed to target squishies, I guess, right?
Yeah, because if you're going after tanks, it's going to take 2-3 swings, especially like if you don't have nano. And in that time, like those heroes are more durable against the blade, and you're allowing all the squishies on the enemy team to really focus you down. Because when you pull out the blade, everyone knows it's coming, and you generally get focused down. So it's like, how do you still survive and get value? And a lot of that is like that's why I think waiting and baiting out enemy cooldowns is so important, so that they don't have the resources to allocate towards focusing you. Or even if they do focus you, it's just they have to hit tons of like shots.
Yeah.
As opposed to I'm just gonna armor pack or flail or bash or lamp or coach gun.
Okay.
That's just my thought process.
You wanna, I guess. Oh yeah, I guess we haven't really gone into very mechanical parts of the blade. So you mentioned like, I guess I don't really know how to best. I feel like it's kind of situational in terms of like how you use your dash, right? So like let's say this, right? Like, you know the Ash's coach gun, right?
Right.
And so maybe you can position yourself such that you draw the blade, right?
Right.
And you're close enough to the Ash so that you can drop on them and bait out the coach gun, right? And then you use your dash to close the distance again, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of stuff is like something like you takes a little creativity, but it's like like once you get used to it, like should be it'll make your blades like more useful. And like things like it goes the same for like Brig too, right?
Right.
Like you bait the flail and then use your dash to get back in.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point, because the classic blade, right, is everyone thinks, I'm going to dash in the air and get nanoed and then, dash afterwards and get the reset. But, I mean, certainly, like, sometimes holding on to that dash, or at least the second one, for when you really need it is definitely important. That way you can outplay. Because, like, we talked about all the different cooldowns that the enemy might have to outplay Blade, right? And, like, not all of them is resulting in, like, the Genji dying. Sometimes it's just the enemy getting away. But the reality of the situation is, it's rare that you're ever going to get a chance to Blade and all those cooldowns have been used, right? So on some level, the initial positioning, I think the creativity is important, and the staging is very important. And especially if you don't have like nano, and you're not super durable, I think it's sometimes important to have that dash sometimes just to stay alive.
I think common mistake is, well, like, so something I think Sp9rkle does really well, and maybe we haven't seen it yet, but he, like, I feel like lower tier Genjis are always just gonna hard commit in and like burn everything, and then maybe get stuck somewhere, right, and end up dying. It's like best case, right? You want to still stay alive even though you're ulting and blading, whatever. I think, I just think it's still important to like try and stay alive.
I
Like
don't.
in this instance where Sparkle has died and gone down, like the fight's already over though, right? Because he's
Right.
already. I think actually, yeah, they killed like the entire team already, so it's like it's fine to like it's it's okay to go down. I think, but yeah, I was gonna say something else, but I forgot. Yeah. Oh, I was gonna say, I think before Blades, right? I think generally a good practice is to like get at least some sort of scouting information, right? I
Mm-hmm.
feel like dashing in blind is like probably the worst thing you can do, right?
Right.
Um, so like I think before you draw a blade, always like take a peek, right? Look at positioning, like where the supports are. Generally, if supports are good, they're probably gonna be like in the way back somewhere.
Right.
It's just like I feel like you should just peek, like mentally check where the good targets are, right? Like so, like maybe Ash or like the supports. I would never go for Tracer. I think maybe like if a tank is low, and then like just like prepare like just like go in as prepared as possible. Like set yourself up for success. I didn't think like a lot of like getting a good blade is just like mentally, like just like keeping track of cooldowns and then knowing where like getting an idea of where everyone's positioned. And then just having an idea of like how you want to counter cooldowns, right? Like so like we said, like using maybe like saving your dash to close the distance if you get coach gunned or like you get flailed or something.
All right.
Yeah, I think that's it. Probably keep going now.
Definitely. Yeah. On pause. Actually, let me make sure I turn the sound back on. Yeah, I don't know if there's a way I can change the stream delay. Feels like a lot more than normal.
There is a setting that's like near real time.
It's interesting because it's like I haven't really changed that setting at all. Normally it's much closer, but.
All right, so like when we're posturing, right? I think just setting up to like get poke. You're probably not gonna get a pick, right? Oh, I wanna kind of we can talk about the dash, right?
Yeah, I'm watching the stream now. Yeah, so playing at angles, like using this natural cover, right? It's like being close up where you can still poke, like against the Sigma here.
Yeah.
But still being around a wall, and you have the deflect up, so it's safe. And now we just see a huge halt, and then saving the cooldown to combine with that. But throughout this whole time, right, it's like a lot of poking and a lot of output of damage, but at the same time, it's like using natural cover so that, like you're still safe. So you're outputting a lot of damage, but like you have the natural cover to protect you, and he has the deflect up. He's not like just wasting that for no reason.
Right. And I want to point out like his very first dash, right? He climbed over that wall and then dashed through the back of the enemy team into his team, right? Like so, like when we're talking about like how do you say it? Like just like elevating like your damage output, like that kind of like creative usage of like cooldowns is like important. Like we said, we don't want to dash in, right? So like how else can we use dash to get like dash is good damage, right? You don't just want it sitting on like cool, like you don't want like sitting there and not use it, right?
Right.
So like getting creative, right? Like climbing over the wall, like going into their backline and dashing through them back into your team is something I think is very smart and like just increases the amount of damage. Right? Like shurikens do a lot, but you're probably gonna be hitting shields. You're gonna do like doing like small poke damage. Like you're probably gonna miss a lot of shurikens, right?
I want to see that again, actually.
Yeah, so I think that dash is like something very like it's just a very smart play, and it's nothing flashy, right? It's like let's see how much ultra he gets 10% off of that, right? So this next dash though, he goes in when like they're already up 1, so they know they have the advantage. Now they're up a lot, right? They have no DPS, so he's safe to dash in. Right, yeah, just like clean up the fight.
But you're talking about not this dash here, but the one before that? Where was the one where he went from, like, you were talking about how he went to their backline and flashed and then dashed back into his team?
Yeah, so it wasn't really their like back line, but like he like climbed over that wall, like the very first. And then the second dash I was just talking about, he he went for that because it was just like they were already up 2, right? And they were already. I think the call came out to just like push and clean up.
And he had his friendly halt, and he had deflect. Even worst case, like
Yeah,
if they
I
turn
think
on him.
dashing halts is very smart as long as you can get out.
So he's about to have Blade again, so this will be very interesting to see how this next Blade compares to the first. First Blade didn't get a whole lot done. Shock has Flux and Pulse Bomb. Okay, early window. Alright, so we're just starting on this high ground here, rotating based on where Shock's going. Window comes out. Dashing away from the Pulse Bomb and evading the Flux. So now, I mean, Shock's used a good number of ultimates and cooldowns. Oh, okay, gotta keep going. Alright, I'm just gonna go ahead and say that this is gonna be a very big Blade. So kind of poking again over the wall. Flux comes out first. Dashing an enemy when he's exposed and out of the lamp.
So I want to keep talking about like thought process, right? So it's like pre-fight, right? Like, we know we have Flux, right? We know we have our own all. I think just like always being prepared, right? So what I mean, like always be thinking about, okay, our teammate has this. As a DPS, how can I best follow this up? And so like we saw that, you know, when the Flux went out, he was already in position, ready to dash through any targets in the air, and he got the BAP, right? He people off. So in between fights, we're always thinking about, you know, like I think some people have like trouble, like some, I think as tank players, right? It's like, it's annoying, like say when we, like for example, like a Ryan gets a massive shatter, like no one follows up. It's like one of the best ways. So like, yes, maybe the Ryan could do things on his side, right? Like maybe call it out, tell his team, okay, get ready, we're gonna shatter, right? But it's like the more you can take it into your own hands, and this goes for every role, the more you can take it into your own hands and like be actively thinking about how you yourself can be, you know, in the next fight, think about where you should be and how you can best utilize your kit to help win the fight, right? So for Genji, right, we know Genji's DPS, right? We're gonna be looking for damage to help clean up the Flux. Like Flux is gonna do a lot of damage, but it might not kill. So we need DPS to be paying attention to that. So like pre-fight, right? We're probably hitting tab. We're gonna be looking, right? Okay, we have, and they're like, and yes, this is a pro team, right? So they'll be talking. They're gonna be definitely planning. The plan is definitely obvious. So we've already seen it. So the plan is to Flux to open, right, and then Blade after. So knowing this, right, as Genji, we're going to be looking to clean up the Flux, and then we're going to be watching for any low targets that we can immediately Blade into, right, and just like clean up any like low target. So I guess the point of what I'm trying to say is, right, just like, yes, we were talking about, you know, being mentally prepared, like on your Blade and stuff like that, but it's like in Overwatch, you really just got to be thinking, always thinking, always when there's downtime, be thinking about something, right? Think about how you can take next fight. Think how you can combo with your teammate. You know, all that kind of stuff. So,
and I think, you know, we can go back and I've actually rewinded so we can watch this Blade again. But certainly, like, we can look at the details and the attention to detail that Sp9rkle pays on how to follow up and like best maximize damage, right? Because like he had good target priority with focusing the BAP first. He realized the BAP was like suspended in midair, so he goes for the dash on him when he was low. And then he just pulls the Blade out immediately, even though the lamp was out, because it was already like pretty low at that point. He just goes for it. So like, let's just rewatch this.
right.
But like in terms of following up the Flux, like even if your Sigma gets a good Flux, it's very easy to mess up the damage follow up.
Yeah, and I think like his immediate his very quick reaction to Blade immediate after I think is smart.
So
I
we'll
think a lot of people get like scared of like, you know, like, oh, the lamp is still up, right? I'm not gonna pull it, but it's like I feel like the lamp dies pretty easy. Like if people are like focusing it, you maybe have to slash it once and you go for it. But it's like I think what's more important is just like pushing the advantage, right? Pushing the like tempo.
right.
Like if you give them time, like after the flux to like kind of chill, like it just like imagine yourselves in the other team, right? Like the other team's shoes, right? Like you're just getting flux, and your BAP is probably like freaking out, right? Not freaking out, but like you know, just like throwing lamp down, like trying to keep everyone up. Like people are very focused on certain things, but if you
Right.
give them downtime in between that and your blade, it's like you know, you give them a chance to maybe like look at their odds, like maybe they could like group up a little bit, and like pro teams are very fast, right? Like if you give them downtime, they will like counterattack. And
Right.
so I think the way Sparkle like just immediately goes into Blade is really good. Like you don't want to give them time to think. You want to you want to take advantage of the chaos and push the advantage, in your team's favor. And by doing so, they won that last fight, right? Even though Shock had two big ults.
Yeah, I love the pace that Eternal put on that fight, and I just love the focus fire too. As soon as they flux, they immediately focus the BAP first, which I think is really smart. And then he immediately pulls the blade out, gets the lamp, and then once that's done, it's like, I mean, they're all kind of trapped in that little hallway over there, and
Right.
and they just push forward and just W in, just get tons more cleanup with the blade, just like no fear, and I think that was really wise. Um, but I mean, it was good like that he focused the BAP and the team focused the BAP down first, and that the lamp was already out, and they were able to break it quickly. But had Shock played that a little bit differently, and maybe if the BAP didn't get caught or something like that, and like two tanks got caught, for example, maybe it wouldn't have been as easy to go gung ho with the blade, you know. Um,
Yep.
so I think part of it, and the tricky part is like reading like the fight and what kind of opportunity you have, um, and knowing when you can really push that pace. Because one thing I find fascinating with Genji is I feel like you kind of have to transition from like this poke kind of more slow phase to like a more brawly, divey, aggressive phase, and knowing when to kind of flip that switch and really go for it is I think very difficult. And it just so happened that in that fight it was okay to really go for it early on. That was the correct play. But in other fights, you know, you may not have that opportunity. But we'll just play out the rest of the map. So spoiler, Shock does take this point, which is actually kind of incredible. They have an insane stall, but through Choi and Striker touching, but
Yeah, let's see if we can notice any mistakes here.
yeah, this will be interesting to see from Sp9rkle's POV.
Okay, so immediate focus on the ball. Push him out. Good. We see a Tracer, we see their BAP.
So I think the key here is just focusing damage with your team.
Yeah.
Which it doesn't seem like Paris is doing much of. He is staying alive, which is good, but yeah, I mean, Shock really clutched that out. I don't know if Sp9rkle necessarily, that's a micro thing, that's probably more of a macro team issue.
Yeah, I think that's a macro. That's really not much you could particularly do, I think, as an individual there. Yeah.
Alright, we'll go to the next map. So University is going to be the same comps. I'm a little ahead of the stream right now, but... Alright, so we're kind of poking in this hallway here. Not overextending, just kind of like maintaining our presence, staying close to our front line. Trying to win shield war, dashing the pulls again. You have deflect up. So it's safe to go for that. And just continuously kind of hopping around and using like these pillars and wall as cover to kind of reposition.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I guess it's really just important to recognize that just like not going in, like this is not Genji on a dive comp, right? So it's like you're not just like going and assassinating the backline on your own all the time. Like you have to be very careful about that, especially if the enemy team is playing more of a ranged poke style, um, because no
Right.
one can really go into the backline and dive with you.
Yeah.
And especially with the Brig nerf, you're not gonna necessarily get the. And I don't remember if they played on that patch, but you don't have like that overheal extra armor buff anyway. So you know at most you're only ever gonna have 200 HP. So you're not durable. And he only really goes for Ansan there once Ansan was already kind of extended into like a space that Eternal had already occupied and was separated from the rest of his team. He didn't just dive the Ashe 1v1 like while that fight was still breaking
Yeah, I
breaking out.
think, or I would wonder, like, if Ons had actually made it all the way up to the top, right?
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if it's probably Sparkle's job there, right, to like go pressure that. Like, after you guys probably just gonna pack him, and then I think it'd be worth taking that fight. But yeah, I think at the end there was like the core shock had already been like destroyed. So
Right. I mean, certainly if Ansan was able to get a better positioning and if that fight was still more neutral, then at some
yeah,
point, yeah, Ansan will become very effective, and it's definitely probably Sparkle's job in this comp
yeah,
to go deal
we
with
might
that.
see it. We might see it later. So
But it does seem like at the beginning of a lot of these fights and points, he is really focusing that front line and trying to just win the tank battle with his front line and establish presence, and then deal with flankers after. So I'm just gonna keep playing.
yeah.
All right, so we're about to see just some more poking here.
Do you think it is like somewhat? So like, should Genji be thinking about breaking shields at all?
I mean,
I feel like,
honestly, the way I see him playing, I feel like a little bit, yeah. Like if you don't have anything better to do.
you know,
All right, so let me pause that there.
that,
So
that was I felt like that was somewhat risky, but I think it's just being. I think it's just like being aggro is fine here.
yeah, and a lot of this is like he is playing like with the core of his team a lot. So he probably
Yeah.
like they're communicating what resources are being used, like where the shields are gonna be, like aggressive lamps. These are things that you may not necessarily always see in like a ranked game.
Yeah, yeah, I think, yeah, maybe after, yeah, it's like after this, after we finish the map, I think we can maybe talk about how certain, like, I think it's just important to note that like certain things that Sparkle does is because he's in this like very organized team setting, right?
Right.
Like in ranked, you're probably gonna be you probably want to be a little bit more aggro and like taking flank damage or like doing your own thing, like finding value by yourself.
Right.
Whereas right now he's very focused on utilizing the pulls, right? Dashing through the pulls. I think he's dashed almost every single one. Um, right. And I think Ben Best is definitely thinking about giving him good safe pulls, right? That he can
Right.
dash. So I think it's just important to notice that yes, he is like the things that he's doing right now are like very good, and like if you get the chance in a ranked match to do it, but um, like I think there are other ways that Sparkle could be like. Just like keep in mind, right? Like there's probably other ways that Genji could be playing this scenario, but yeah, like you said,
Right.
I think looking for a very team-oriented, very combo-based style here, and I mean, it's obviously working.
And to your point about like should you be shooting shields and stuff, like that's another thing that I think does depend on kind of the context. Like if
Yeah,
you are in a more of a team setting and it's kind of understood that the Genji will be poking it, like if your entire team is focusing shields, I
hmm,
think you can get value as Genji, right clicking, and that damage could be significant. And
right,
furthermore, if you're playing with your core, I think the deflect value is a lot more valuable in winning the shield war too. Like especially if you're deflecting Sigma orbs and Orisa shots back at them.
mm,
Um, so yeah, I think that kind of a thing also depends on the context. Whereas like if it's ranked and the people aren't like shooting shields together, or like maybe winning a duel is more important, or shutting down like an enemy carry, then maybe simply just Like, if you're the only one shooting shield as Genji, then that's probably not where the character is optimized, right?
Yeah.
But I think, like, Sp9rkle is definitely not the only one shooting shields when he's shooting shields. Like, he's always, like, with his Orisa and Sig.
Yeah. I think, in general, as, like, just, like, a player, it's, like, when you want to get better, and you have the basics all pretty solid, it's, like, I think the best way you can next optimize your play is just to be thinking about, like, be aware, like, like the times that you're just like doing nothing and thinking about, oh, well, like what could I be doing here to like increase my value. So maybe on Genji that's just spamming shields or like setting up for a flank or like looking for other poke angles, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Let's keep going here. So, I mean, really good cleanup. Sp9rkle got a lot of kills that fight. Eventually just gets killed by On's a little unlucky, but it won't really matter because he'll be back this next fight. And we have Blade. So it'll be very interesting to see this alt usage. And so Shock's got Window, Pulse Bomb, and Flux coming up. So I just watched the Blade on my screen. Wasn't too big, but he just kind of goes in, immediately comboed with the halt, so you know that was a little bit coordinated. And a lamp comes in, gets the brig. But eventually Shock is just kind of winning this fight. Switches to focus back on frontline. Deters the flanker a little bit. I mean, this is kind of lost already. Because they're down.
Yeah, so I want to point out that like earlier we said, like dashing and blind is not smart. I think Sp9rkle did do a dash blind or a blind dash there, but I think it's just like understanding that I guess the context of their position, right? Like we know that it's like we see that our tanks are fighting their core on the right room, right?
Right.
So we can assume that the majority of their team is like kind of funneled into that right corner. So I think it's like it looked like a blind dash, but I think like we took Sp9rkle took context clues and like used that as a
Yep, context clues, and definitely the team was communicating. And I mean, you can just tell even by the cooldown usage, right? Because as soon as he blades, like the halt had already been sent in, and probably the biggest sign is if you notice Fielder just threw in a very, very aggressive lamp.
Yeah.
Immediately. So by the time he had like swung in, the halt was perfectly right there in front of him, and the lamp was there as soon as he like hit the ground. I mean, Sp9rkle didn't die for a while there, so like that was definitely kind of communicated. And I'm sure someone told him just to go for it, that they had the cooldowns ready as soon as he was back. But yeah, that's the kind of play where it's like in ranked. I don't think that you could expect a lamp especially to be thrown in that way, and maybe the halt. I mean I think that's a bit tough.
Yeah, I mean it's like in ranked, like it's even a bargain or debate if you even like get an Orisa, and if the Orisa's even talking is another issue. So
right, and I mean obviously everyone knows that, like, or people should realize that like the ranked versus like organized play of any sort is like very different. But I mean, this also goes to show that especially at the Overwatch League level, like these are the kind of optimizations that like you have to make and you have to do, because it just the level of play is so high, right? So like any little bit of edge you can get over your opponent is really important, and like being able to just go into plays like that is what allows you, like you said, to like not give your opponents time to think and set up a plan. So I mean, in this case, Shock still wins the fight, but like Eternal was definitely going for a very, very aggressive play there, and had Shock not been prepared and like utilized their ults properly, then certainly like you could see Eternal potentially pulling that fight win off. So I'm getting another skip frames warning error. I don't know what it's looking like, but
it's okay for now.
so we won't have Blade this fight.
Right, so they have Bongo, they have High Noon. I think Sp9rkle's probably looking to, utilize the Bongo damage, farm his blade.
Yeah, and so we can see at the beginning of all these fights, it's generally focusing the tanks first.
Yeah.
Like, he really seems to be putting the priority on, like, winning that frontline battle and keeping, allowing his tanks to get presence on the point, and then cleaning up from there. He's not really ever starting any of these fights going after squishies. This is kind of a very long drawn-out fight, so we'll go back and look at this. But, like, I think it's important to point out that he wasn't too greedy with the blade there.
Yeah.
Like, he could have went for the Ashe, but he was not actually going to kill Ansan there. Ansan was... Because he was 1, and Ansan was 100% going to hit another shot on him, and he didn't have any cooldown, so he just stayed alive.
Yeah.
So, even though I don't remember if that blade got any kills, he may have gotten 1.
Yeah. And we also saw a coordinated dive onto On's top left with the XZ. I think, yeah, there was just a call to Ash's top left, and you just want to... I think that's Genji if you can clear out a sniper. And if you get help with it, I think it's just high value.
Right, but I think it's so fascinating, just the kind of playstyle we're seeing from Sp9rkle, right? Because it's very patient, and in many ways it is very team-centric, and I find it, like, yes, he does eventually go for these duels and clear out Ons, or, like, maybe get Striker, but it's, like, as the fight starts to break out, right? Yeah. So it's a very different kind of Genji style than maybe years ago, or, like, even Genji in Dive. Like he is not looking at, he's not really going after Bap or Brig at the beginning of really any of these fights, outside of maybe when he has Blade.
Right.
And certain cooldowns are being, like, exchanged. So I think to that end, it's, like, really using cover to kind of poke down the Orisa or Sigma, get close to them as possible, where you can still potentially use some natural cover to just keep right-clicking right on top of them. He, like, breaks the Bongo pretty quickly, deflecting right up against the enemy tanks' faces. Dashing through the tanks, as they're low. And really, once they're focused down, then kind of going after the backline or Ansan or whoever's low after that. But it's like much less of a divey Genji and more of, like, kind of a brawly poke kind of Genji. At least the beginning of fights.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to the kind of incredible third point where Paris eventually takes the map in the series.
I don't see it that way. To me, it's an honor. The truth namaste.
Activating the barrier.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Alright, so we're about to see a little bit of Sim here just to get the TP out, but he'll play Genji. And the comps are still the same as the entire map. So if we kind of keep the same, we're going to probably take some of the high ground, poke from these, like, rooms. So again, kind of poking shields, poking the tanks, using natural cover. In this case, it's this kind of ledge. Got stunned there, but still kind of focusing tanks, dashing from behind, kind of as we've talked about before. Dashing pulls. Focusing the lamp so that, we can actually secure kills. Looking like Shock is going to win this fight, but...
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I know anything in particular, but
I mean, if we look at ult charge rate, he's doing well, and I will say that it's good to see that in most of these fights, if not all, like, Sp9rkle is one of the last people to die, right? And I feel like as Genji, not to oversimplify things, but if you're, like, one of the last people on your team to die in a fight, I feel like that's really good, right? Because I think, I mean, a mistake, and obviously I'm not
Yeah,
like,
if we look at Jello's Genji,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
There's a
It's easy to feed at the very beginning of fights, right? And I think a huge
yeah.
part of that is like the the discipline with dash. And
Yes,
I
yeah.
can't stress this
Cooldown,
enough, right? Like
cooldown management, yeah.
cooldown management, and also and maybe we'll
Just
kind of
gotta
recap this at the end, but like the context, right? So it's like in ranked, even if you see Orisa pulls, it's like a lot of times you can't dash at them the way like Sparkle's going after these. Because like
yeah.
Fielder is putting the lamp in after, or like there's more support there. So it's like in ranked, I feel like it's almost like you need to be like resist the temptation sometimes to like go after like potentially super aggro like and flashy plays just for the sake of staying alive. Because you just staying alive allows you to continue to put
Yeah,
out damage.
I think an important part of it is just like reading your team. And like, I mean, you probably won't even have this exact comp. Like, you might even have a Brig who's gonna pack you, right? Like having that Brig to pack you
Yeah.
definitely allows Sparkle to do a lot of these things, right? And he's being kept alive a lot of the time by FD God just packing.
Right.
But yeah, it's like, like kind of reading what the limitations are. And sometimes you get unlucky and you either get stunned, you either get headshot, something happens, right? You get pulled or something. But yeah, I think it's a really great thing that like to bring up that, yes, like Sparkle, right? He's not dying first. Like I think one of the worst things that DPS can do is just like go down first.
Yeah.
Like getting picked in general is bad on any role.
Right.
But I think a lot of DPS fall into a very, I don't know. It's like when you lose a DPS, it's a big deal, right? Like we all know that losing a main healers like sucks, or like main tank, right? But it's like, and I think sometimes DPS, like tend to forget like or get away with like getting picked and
Right.
like, no one flames them, right? But it's like it is a big deal, right? Like imagine how much damage that thing. It's like you just down one in general. So yeah, staying alive, dude. Overwatch is about staying alive. That is for sure.
Yeah, I mean, if we're just talking about how to get more value in general, certainly dying first is one of the worst ways to kind of limit your own value.
Dying is just like, yeah, it's just like that's 10 seconds being respawned and then a couple seconds walking back, right? And it's like, just imagine how much damage you could be doing if you were alive. Like, say if your team was like still fighting. It's just, yeah, you just obviously do more. You're able to do more.
I mean, as a plat Genji, one thing I will say is I think part of the problem is like as a DPS, like sometimes you feel the urge that like you're in this rush and you need to like pop off now. Otherwise, like as time kind of progresses and as the fight breaks out, like if you're not getting kills and if you're not like getting that initial entry pick, like the enemy team's DPS might start to take over the fight, or like you're not doing enough. So it's just easy to get in like this rush of like trying to chase down that initial entry pick. But like oftentimes if you just die immediately anyway, like it's probably not worth that one for one. I mean, sometimes maybe it is, but like that's not the kind of habit you want to develop.
Yeah, I think a very common thing that I see is like, these like lower tier players, they're always very, I don't know, they're like, you're either like you're like not, I guess you just like, sometimes like lower tier players just don't play selfish enough. And what does that mean, right? Like
Yeah, what does that mean? I think it's good to explain.
so like sometimes main tank, like just for example, let's say Orion, maybe you'll see a like lower tier Orions will like waste their shield trying to save someone who's like overextended,
Right.
and then his shield breaks and then he gets caught out, right, with that person, and then he ends up going down, but he maybe saves the other person, but he still died, right?
Right.
And it's like, like yes, you save someone, but it's like in the end, someone's like you still died.
Yeah.
And it's just like, in rank specifically, it's like if you yourself, like you can only really trust your teammates, but obviously, but like you can only really trust yourself, right? Like what you could be doing to help win the fights. So it's like prioritize, and it's just in general, right? It's like if everyone prioritizes staying alive, it's just, I mean, it's just better because like we're not. I think it's just important to prioritize staying alive. Like, and so when I play selfish, right, like especially like this is the same for supports, right? Sometimes supports overextend to try to heal a tank that's maybe out of position.
Right, and then they end up dying.
Right, right, and they end up dying. Right, that's just like that's, you're not helping anyone in that case, right? It's like the best thing you can do actually in that position is to save your to keep your good position, right? And then maybe start thinking about, oh, like now they're gonna push, right? How should I be playing next, right?
So I think one logical question, right, is like, so what does playing selfishly, like in a good way, look like for Genji, right? Like what how does like Genji play selfish in a good sense?
I would say only committing when you know that you can like when you're like only committing like into safe like like safe engages, right?
Yeah.
Like when you like just I feel like patience is very important.
Right. I
And it's
agree.
like right, like I think a lot of like lower tier DPS are very angsty to like get and do damage, like get the pick, right?
Yep.
Like you're paying to
Definitely.
get a pick. But it's like if you just go so quick and you just like get like you put yourself in a bad situation and you die, it's like well it's like well you didn't accomplish anything. Like if anything you hurt your team, right?
Right.
Um so there's definitely a balance, right? You don't want to play like so safe that you're not doing anything at all, but you also want to be smart, right? So playing selfishly as Genji, we're gonna be looking for safe dashes in where we can get the damage, but also safely get out, or maybe set up for like safe poke angles. Look for like maybe look for a value deflect on like a fire strike, or I mean in this case, there's nothing really particular to deflect.
Right.
It's just like taking the engage the way you want, right? And I think this is very important for tank. Like a lot of times people pressure tanks to like, oh, like we should push now, but it's like maybe your Ryan's shield is down, like he's low health, right? Like, and then he suddenly pushes and he just dies, and then suddenly you guys are in a disadvantage, right? It's like I think just like make sure like just like take like make sure you're comfortable, or, like make sure the situation is comfortable, and then like use your cooldowns in a way that you feel like you can get the most value while also staying alive. Yeah, I don't know. Does that kind of make sense? I guess.
Yeah. No, I mean I think I would have phrased it very similarly.
Okay.
Yeah, and like just managing your cooldowns properly, like maybe like to your point about like going after the fight like when you're ready for it and taking it the way you want, like maybe if you get nanoed and you have blade but maybe you don't have deflect up, like you're still cautious about going. I mean maybe not, like maybe you can still go in, but like not necessarily needing to always be in like such a rush.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I think certainly in ranked, just like if you're staying alive and like getting kills, like getting
Right.
kills without like dying that much, like even if your team around you is collapsing, at that point it's like you're still getting good value. So you don't need to overcompensate by like just starting to feed at the beginning of every fight.
Right. Yeah. And I think yeah, I mean, it's just in general, like if you watch any other like high level DPS, it's like they're very like you can tell like they're like there's a lot of things they're thinking about. Where like I feel like the common conception of DPS is like, oh, like like all aim and like no brain, like that kind of stuff. It's like
Yeah.
you just gotta get in and like frag out. But it's like you can still be smart about it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very important to be like thinking like very like like take the engages you want. Be thinking about any dangerous cooldowns you need to watch. How can you combo with your team, right? Like all that kind of stuff should be in your mind.
Definitely.
But yeah.
Let's keep it going. So Shock have control of the point, and we're halfway to Blade, even off of a relatively quiet fight, so that's pretty good. Shock is going to have support ults and pulse bomb, and Eternal is going to have rally. Sp9rkle might be able to build up a Blade here. So I'll be interested to see. Stream's a little behind, but how Sp9rkle and Paris are going to dislodge Shock off this high ground positioning.
Yep. That's a good point.
Because this will be tricky, and I think it'll be really interesting to see how like patient Sp9rkle is in the approach here. So again, just kind of poking, not like just dashing in randomly.
Right, like right there. Or I don't know where you're at, but when that pull went out, he was thinking about dashing in, right?
Right.
But then he saw it got 8, right? So then he thought better of going for that. I'm
Yeah, I'm looking at the stream now too.
Yeah. Okay.
So
We can kind of talk about what happened after that, but it's just like I feel like there's like you can like tell very it's like very clear when there's like they're like posturing, right? So like
right.
Sparkle's like poking, right? Like just poking the shield, like spamming at the shield. And then the moment the pull comes out, he's thinking about looking for that dash, for the damage and whatnot.
But
But
decisions like that are so fascinating, right? Because it's so easy, and so many people would have pulled the trigger there and gone for the dash.
right.
And maybe he had deflect up in that situation, so maybe like potentially like stay alive, but like it's still super super risky, and your team is gonna have to bail you out with potentially some of their cooldowns too. So like knowing not to dash that one, especially if you got eaten,
Yeah.
and just that's like
I
the
think
discipline and patience we're talking about.
it's just a good heads up by Sparkle to not dash or like because he just saw it get eaten. And like a lot of this playstyle, like the playstyle of this comp is really just to like pocket Genji. Like you just
Yeah.
like the Genji's gonna be dashing your like pull for the Genji, and then Brig's gonna be packing the Genji, right? Like all that kind of stuff. It's gonna be happening.
Yeah.
Just enabling DPS in that sense. But yeah, we can watch the later part of this, or what happens after that.
The back half of the fight was he has a second dash through an Orisa pull, and maybe I'll just rewind.
Yeah, and I thought he went pretty deep there.
That was aggressive. But I think that was also by design and because he was about to have Blade.
Yeah.
And then he goes for this Blade when they've already destroyed the enemy lamp. So, okay.
I think he was just going off instinct there with the moment the lamp went down.
Right, so we're about to see it here.
Goes out, he's in, gets it. Yeah, I mean, so I mean, so we don't know exactly what's going through his head, but I think it's maybe worthwhile thinking about why he made a decision to Blade there.
Right.
Because I do feel like I don't think he pulled it off of nothing, right?
I think there are a few signs we can point to, right? So, like, for one, at the time he pulled out the Blade, Paris had just gotten, I think, 2 picks in a row. So Choi died, and maybe Striker was the other one, it looks like.
Yeah, so I think that was like that's like my first theory is that like, okay, they got 2 picks.
And the second thing is that they just destroyed the lamp, too.
Right, lamp. And I imagine going into this fight, they were already planning the Blade.
Right.
So he was probably just like looking to turn the fight there. But On's got an insane bob.
On's got an insane bob, and he actually almost killed Violet. Violet's full now, but had he killed Violet and then been able to dash towards On or just stayed alive, like this fight could end up very differently. So I think even in like this Blade got shut down, right? In the sense that like you look at it, Sparkle dashes in the air, he dashes towards a support, and he just gets blown up, right? But I think it's important to like recognize that there's still a lot of like good intentions behind this Blade and good setup.
Right.
And I think it was worth going for this. And again, like certainly like your Blade decisions in terms of when to pull out the Blade, the context definitely matters, but I think the approach and the idea from Eternal is still correct because they haven't capped the point yet. Like they need to flip this at some point. And that was a winnable fight.
Yeah.
And it's just
I feel like it seemed like the bob came out right as he pulled the Blade as well.
Right.
So it's not like I think if the bob had come out a little bit earlier, he probably would have like held out a little bit.
Right.
Or maybe not. I don't know. But and you could argue maybe he just did mess up, right? Like he maybe just rushed it. But I actually don't. Yeah, I don't know. But I think we can give them benefit of the doubt and like say that like point out certain things that he might have been thinking about, and maybe he just got outplayed here, which happened, right? It's like like yes, we would like every Blade to be amazing and win every fight, but the enemy teams are smart, and you're playing against Shock, right?
Yeah, and certainly like if we look at it from On's POV, like I'm sure he clearly made a big individual play here too. And I don't think it was just the bob. I think he probably hit a shot on Sparkle too. Because Sparkle, if anything, the initial dashes was what I thought was very risky and aggressive, but he survived that and was able to kind of wall climb and get another dash reset back. Because he still ended up dashing in the air before he bladed. And then he dashed back down at Violet. And I think when he went for Violet, he was close to full. But he just gets melted. I'll just play this one more time. Oh, and yeah, they're on the patch where, like... maybe not, maybe not. I was gonna say, like, because Sparkle's at 300 HP right now, but maybe that's just rally armor, so maybe that's...
Well, they are on the patch where the pack overheals.
Oh, okay, okay.
But yeah, what he has right now is rally armor, which is a good combo too. Like rallying in to get the buff and then blading. That's...
Okay, so the Bob does come in a little bit before. So
Yeah,
he
actually,
actually could have been a little bit more patient with that blade, and he was half health when he went for it. So like
Yeah.
Fielder is like low here, but the Bob is already out, and he dashes in the middle of shock. So he could have been a little bit more patient there.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of misplay there.
Had they burnt the Bob, I think he would have had a much better chance of.
Right. Yeah.
And he healed up a little bit more.
Yeah.
But that's
Yeah, I agree.
interesting, right? It's like such a fine line, because when we first watched it just like 2 or 3 minutes ago, we were thinking, okay, like it's pretty rational, like it was close, but that Bob was out. But again, like these are the kind, like you have to just read these fights, like especially in these mid fights. I feel like that's one of the most difficult like blades to figure out.
Yeah, and it's like, I think blade is it's like best used when like early fight, right? I don't think, well,
You think so? I think it's tough.
like I don't, I think it can work in late fight, but and like sometimes you get those insane blades that just like clean up fights, right? But
Right.
I feel like blade gets a lot of value early to mid, because like especially at this tier, right? I feel like if you like hold blade, or like if you're too patient, or like
Right.
you take too long to pull it, like you're almost, I don't know, it's just like you're almost like doing nothing in a way, and you like it's very dangerous, right? Because I feel like if you're not using anything else, then I don't know. I don't really know where I'm getting with this, but
I sort of see what you're saying. Like I agree with some of the points, like in the sense that I think it's very dangerous at this level to be almost like too how should I phrase this? Like reserved, right? Like just hold on to the blade for too long, because like at this level you can charge ults very quickly and get tons and tons of like ults. So like just holding it forever is just like making you just get less ults. Like by the time like if you use it, even if you whiff it, you may have another one, like a fight or two, right?
Right, yeah.
So like you don't want to just completely and like we've talked about the ability to like set tempo and like not give your opponents time to think. So certainly like going earlier in fights is better for that. But I guess what I will say is like the one caveat I think we need to explain, especially for like any sort of audience, is like, especially when we talk about blades early, like it's important to also understand that again we're not suggesting you just go gung ho and just like, especially like if you go too early and the enemy has like all their cooldowns, right, then it might be a problem because they can shut you down pretty easily. But like if Lamp is gone, if Coach Gun's gone, if like Brig doesn't have her bash, and that happens at the beginning of the fight, yeah, I mean by all means, I think like. But where it gets tricky is like when you have like ultimate fights, right? So like in this case, I think the Bob was a big problem. So that's another thing you kind of have to track. So it's like, yes, like in general, okay, maybe if you can get away with blades earlier in fights and just set tempo on opponents, perhaps that's more ideal. But when they have ultimates too and then they throw a Bob out, unfortunately, I don't feel like you can always just respond to their ult with your ult, right? It's like sometimes it's like you have to concede, okay, like they just decided to make a move quicker than us and now we need to adapt and deal with that. And sometimes the answer is not just like to initially like counter with my own ult, right? It's like especially an ult like Bob, like I feel like as Genji, like it's Bob is super annoying. Especially if you're blading. Like it's like that's the last thing you want to deal with because you're not killing Bob with blade. And you really don't want to like, you obviously can't use your shurikens if you have blade. So all you can do is deflect, but if you're deflecting to a Bob, it's like you're not getting any value with your blade, right? So it's like Based on the positioning of the Bob, Ons put it in a really smart position where it was like right under that pillar, like in the middle of the points. It was like impossible to ignore. So like if Bob is in a position where you can just avoid and you can just go after enemy like the enemy team squishies in particular without having to even be within LOS of Bob, I think it's okay. But like that, looking back, was a bit ambitious. But this is difficult, right? I mean, we were talking about how just like minutes ago we thought it was a lot more rational than it ended up being, but it's just tough to read these fights.
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep going.
The fight's still going with back too. Crazy.
Right. And that was because Parrish just had teammates still alive. So that was an aggressive dash, but like his teammates are there. Again, focusing the bongo early, focusing tanks, using this natural cover. Like, look at this corner here. It just like right-clicking, but not within LOS of like the enemy.
That was a great fight for them to win.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the percentage now. They really needed to win this fight.
Oh, that was really well done.
Because now Shock's in one fight territory. So I think what's going to be interesting here is, like, in this next fight, how does Sp9rkle stage? Because he's getting close to another blade. So he's using this kind of window position to kind of start off with the poke. I imagine he's mainly going to be focusing tanks. Aggressive dash, but notice he had the halt there, so that was definitely communicated.
Yep.
Being very mindful of LOS. I can't stress this enough. Just like using cover. The only time he peeked when they had that window there is when he had deflect up.
Yep.
They have a bongo here. He's still being very careful, just poking. So he's about to... He has blade. Let's see how he uses it, if anything. Again, comboed with the halt.
Yeah, really great attention to combo there.
And really, a lot of patience on the dash there. If you notice, he holds that dash for a while. Like, once he pulls out the blade. Because he's already within range of, like, Sig and Brig.
Right.
And he knows that they have cooldowns to potentially, like, stun him and stuff, too. So, like, really good, like... You don't just need to dash immediately. So, like, certainly holding that cooldown. I think that was just great discipline. But, I mean, I just love the positioning, too. Just rotating, like, around that window and just jumping back from, like, the platform high ground to, like, the window. Really being mindful of LOS, showing Shock a lot of respect. Farming the blade, and then just using the blade in a very intelligent way. I just feel like Sp9rkle constantly finds himself, like, using the cover. I mean, which is just a concept, I feel like, of just good positioning, right?
I think that's a really great point to bring up, because I think a lot of, right, for like a lot of, you know, lower tier DPS have the issue of either over peaking, right, and either getting picked that way or just, I mean, straight up not playing cover. But yeah, like using cover, like playing safe, right, knowing, like, you know, like no one can really contest him when he's in the low cubby. It's a really great spot, but he still needs to be careful of, like, Ons, you know, who can get a headshot on him, or, you know, like he might get pulled out by the Orisa, or like Sigma can throw orbs, but it's just like it's still better than, you know, just like jumping.
Yeah, and I'm rewinding this, and I'm gonna replay the blade again. But like even when he dashes, it's like dashing up against a wall, where like Shock is not going to be able to see him. And then only exposing himself at the very, very last minute. Or last second. Like right when the halt comes in and he can actually just swing. So like we'll see it here. So he dashes up, like up against this, like Shock can't touch him there. And by the time he's like within range of them, it's like too late for them to really like put much pressure on him.
Yeah.
It wasn't just like dashing straight through the archways, like into the middle of Shock's backline or anything like that. Had that happen, Onsan easily could have hit a shot on him. Like at this level, Choi could rock him. You know, Twilight could like flail him, bash him. So I mean, just like this is really just beautiful play from the Eternal. I'm just gonna keep rolling it, but I mean, you can just see the coordination. Every one of these blades is comboed with like a pull, maybe a lamp. Like the dashes are very intelligent. The focus fire across the team is there. And so this is basically last fight, which if I remember correctly, is actually going to end in absolutely incredible fashion with another big Sp9rkle blade. So that will be exciting to see. And the stream is a little bit behind, but again, staging kind of on this high ground, this window area. And again, beginning a fight, just poking the tanks down, working shields, using cover.
On's just doing a great job of like suppressing him with the dynamite right there.
Yeah, and I think this is why like playing around the cover is like so important, right? Because it's like you have DPS on the other side that can put so much pressure on you. It's like very important to be mindful of like LOS because it's very easy to get picked off if you're not, right? So again, we're seeing these like long drawn out fights, but
again, this is an X. It's the patience from Paris here, right? Like they know Shock have ults, so they're just like kiting so well. Like they even let them flip the point, and it's like that's
right.
a big bash. It just confirms his.
And I believe Hanbin got picked off early in that fight, right? So they wanted to wait for 6.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
this is just absolutely filthy. I mean, what a blade.
That was a fat pull dash, and then excellent blade. Yeah.
But even then, it's right. It's like Paris waiting for 6, the pull with the blade, and I believe there was a bongo down, right? I don't know if that was on. I know Shock put a bongo down. Did Paris have one there too? Maybe not. It was just the pull on their side.
Maybe.
But again, just like the patience to not just dash in, to not just blade without support from the team. I mean, at this level, you definitely need that, right? And just the priority too. Like, I mean, I guess it was good that like Shock was kind of clumped up, but part of that was the pull, and it was just a big blade that he was able to get so many people at once and the bongo.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, certainly just watching this, right, like, it's like, you can tell that there are certain elements that it's like, Sp9rkle's able to play Genji a certain way because of the way Paris is playing around him.
Yeah.
But I think certainly, like, the discipline and just the ability to just continuously get value and stay alive is something that really anyone can take. And if anything, right, like, in Ranked, I feel like you should be playing even more cautiously. Because, like, if you don't have the pulls, the good pulls to support you, or, like, the armor packs, or, like, the aggressive lamps when you go in deep, like, it just goes to show, like, how squishy Genji can be. Like, he was so patient there. Like, Onsan's a great hit scan player, right? And he was dynamiting him literally, I think, every single time he could.
Mm-hmm.
But Sp9rkle was always around a ledge, or, like, around a corner.
Right.
Or
Like,
in a
you
position,
see him, like, ducking back for the armor pack. It's just, like, I think as DPS, it's just so important to be aware. Like, always, like, have an idea where your team is, right?
Right.
Play around your team's resources like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think people were playing around, he's playing around Paris' resources very well. And I mean, that was just a great game from Paris. And certainly there were some, like, a lot of macro things we could dissect there, which you won't do in this VOD. But, like the decision to not push in when Hanbin got picked and give up the point to Shock, and then regroup and then come back in with ults is just a fantastic rotation of patience.
Like, game, like, yeah, they just won in the match.
I mean, it's so easy. Like, it's so, like, it's easy to sit back now and say, you know, oh, great decision. In the moment, like, I don't think people realize, like, how hard it is to, like, be patient and relax and, like, calm enough to make that call and, like,
yeah,
pull that off. Because it's so, it's so hard to just give up the point like that when Shock is basically, like, already at 85%. But yeah, that was great. Okay, cool. I might end the stream real quick just to kind of cut the VOD there, and then we can just go again on